Well. After yesterday's news on the nerfing of the frog farm in the Timeless Isle, we now have a few more changes in WoW Remix. Some of these brought by Blizzard, as they added a few more fixes and some more tuning to the game mode, and others, let's just say, created by the community. Because of course, as you were farming frogs and now frogs are no longer nearly as valuable, players have gone up and started to find alternative ways to grind some of that bronze. Currently, the two most likely alternatives being used by the player base are Sraves, which is the western island in town-long steppes filled with mantids. Those are pretty isolated from the rest of the zone. There are no quests in there, and the mobs in there respawn quite fast, which is being used as a grind spot right now for bronze acquisition. The other one, which used to exist, much like the frog farm, used to exist all the way back in original Mist of Pandaria, is the goat farm. The goat farm in the Valley of the Four Winds, right over here. Very simply, there are about 6 to 7 little packs of goats spread throughout these sloping hills that you can just hop one after the other, and by the time you're done with your run, they will all have respawned and you can continue to kill them over and over. Now, none of this, of course, is nearly as rewarding as the frog farm, mostly because, as we touched on this yesterday, the frogs in the Timeless Isle were elites. And as such, they gave you more bronze, but also they gave you the lesser charms of fortune, which you could then turn in for caches, for even more bronze, which is something that neither the goats in the Valley of the Four Winds or the mantids in Sraves actually are. You will not find any elites in there, so it's just normal mobs. But they are, at the moment, the next best thing after the frog farm has been nerfed. Blizzard did try to come in with some adjustments to the tuning of WoW Remix, not really with that much success. They attempted to fix the enemy power scaling, especially in group content and especially around level 40 to 70. Now this is already live and players have kept pointing out that the scaling is indeed still very wonky towards the higher level range. You still have the max level tanks getting 1 or 2 shot because they are in a group with a level 25, completely screwing up the scaling of the dungeon or of the raid. But they did add some decent improvements. The gear drop rates have been improved from world rares, rare elites, and more importantly quests and quest rewards. This is good, not just because it helps you continuously upgrade your gear as you keep leveling, which is a good addition, but more importantly because then now you can start also scrapping all of this extra gear for bronze, since every one of these scrapped pieces of gear is at least 50 to 60 bronze every time. So it's a nice addition to your bronze intake. They also added the stackable thread of experience from completing LFR wings in the raid. 7% permanent bonus XP gain on your cloak if you complete LFR wings, as well as added bonus experience to each boss in normal dungeons and scenarios to make them a viable alternative to questing. Now this of course has still left some players with a sour taste in their mouth because this is still not going away, right? We still have permanently now players with 2 to 3 to 4 million HP, essentially one-shotting everything, so you feel like you are being useless in a raid and someone else is just straight up carrying you and none of your improvements on your character matter, etc, etc. Now, if you don't care about it, then it's fine. Be happy getting carried by players who did abuse the frog farm, but none of these adjustments right now in WoW Remix are anywhere close to allowing you to become any stronger, really. The only alternative for now is to still dump hundreds of thousands of bronze into gear upgrades for your character. So at this point, the other question should be, after the frog farm has been nerfed and the other couple of farms, the brainless, mindless spam of fast respawning mobs, are not nearly as rewarding right now compared to the frog farm, what can possibly be the alternatives? Well, for now, the simplest one at the moment, it wouldn't have been normally, but ever since Blizzard decided to give this a daily lockout instead of a weekly lockout, then the answer is raids. Even normal raids. You don't have to try to go into the heroic version of the raid. The normal one still is going to give you several thousands of bronze every run. Consider that every single boss you defeat, you get by default 500 bronze, plus at least a couple of items that you will be able to loot, that you can then also scrap for at least 100 more bronze. So you get a bare minimum of 600 bronze per boss, and there are 13 bosses in Throne of Thunder and 14 bosses in Siege of Orgrimmar. So we're talking about 7.8 thousand bronze minimum from doing Throne of Thunder and 8.4 thousand bronze minimum from doing Siege of Orgrimmar. This doesn't include all of the extra bronze you are getting from the trash mobs, because trash is actually a pretty decent chunk of bronze over time over these very long raids, which will account for another 3,000 to 4,000 bronze total. So we're talking about comfortably being above 10,000 bronze gain whenever you clear either normal Siege or normal Throne of Thunder. And this is where, though, the new cheese comes in. Because you might be, well, I'm not a raider, I've never really raided seriously, plus I'm just chilling on this character, maybe I'm even leveling on this character, I'm not ready, I'm not knowledgeable, I'm not prepared to enter a raid in Mists. Not really. There are two things that change in Mist raids. Number one, of course, you can enter them at lower level for a reason. They are not meant to be super challenging. And number two, right now there isn't even any much of a challenge because they are being cheesed with a particular strategy. The particular strategy is the Word of Salvation metagem. Now, the tooltip does already a pretty good job explaining what the ward does. You put the ward on a player, they get an absorb shield, and then for 10 seconds the healing you give to them is turned into an absorb shield. And after 10 seconds, the ward is going to explode for damage, equal to all of the healing they have received, which has since then turned into an absorb shield. So the final absorb shield that is still active on them will explode. This, of course, made players realize that if they run an entire raid with Word of Salvation and everyone puts their Word of Salvation on a single player at the same time, preferably a player that can get some bonuses in being healed for more, like for example a Brewmaster Monk with Celestial Fortune, you have a chance equal to your crit chance to be healed for an additional 80% of the amount healed. And then maybe that Brewmaster Monk can run with the Warmth Tinker Gem to get even more healing taken received from other players. And then the other players can use things like Guardian Spirit to make the target receive 40% more healing. There can be a Mystery Monk using Life Cocoon on the player to get them to be healed even more. And why not have maybe 4, maybe 5 paladins in your group using Lay on Hands on this player. The result is that this player is going to get a hundreds of millions worth absorb shield, which is then going to explode and as a result nearly or completely one-shot a raid boss. There are, of course, some gimmicky bosses with multiple phases or spread targets where they can just be one shot all at once, like, the Klaxi fight in Siege of Orgrimmar, where you have to rotate one kill at a time, or the spoils in Siege as well, where there are many targets and not just one primary target to one shot. But for the majority of the other bosses, this is a plenty viable strategy at the moment to comfortably one-shot the majority of the bosses without, as I mentioned, needing to be prepared or knowledgeable about the raid or the strategies or anything of the sort. This one-shot strategy is working more than fine. And given the rewards you can get in the raid, as mentioned, at the bare minimum 600 bronze per boss kill, it is at the moment one of the faster strategies, especially for the ones who don't have a lot of time. Because it's one thing to say, okay, I have 8 hours a day to grind. Well, if you are in a very good, fast group, it's gonna take you an hour to clear Throne of Thunder, and an hour to clear Siege of Orgrimmar. So what are you gonna do for the next 6 hours you wanted to grind? You don't have that many other avenues, plus the other raids are smaller, they are shorter, they have fewer bosses. It's probably gonna take you more time to actually assemble the group and get in than to actually defeat those bosses. So for players with tons of time, actually grinding a whole bunch of mobs and genociding a bunch of goats could be the answer. But if you're a player without nearly as much time, 1 hour, a couple of hours a day, to be able to try to get as much bronze as you can, then 100% raids are the best answer for you if you want to collect bronze as efficiently as possible without having too much time. Don't forget, we still have our list of things you get to collect in this game. Don't forget that, for example, if you're interested primarily in all of the mounts, that's about 500,000 bronze. If you're interested primarily in just the transmogs and not the mounts or the toys, that's about 750, almost 800,000 bronze. So if you're spending a couple of hours to complete a couple of raids, that will net you about 20,000 bronze. And doing this for a month, not even 3 months, which is the duration of Mists of Pandaria Remix, but for just 1 month, that's gonna net you 600,000 bronze. 600,000 bronze is more than enough, for example, to get yourself all of the mounts in the game. And that's for a month of doing, Throne of Thunder and Siege in normal difficulty, for example. If you are a full collectionist where the total amount of bronze required is 1.6 million or so, then considering there are 90 days left, as we mentioned yesterday, it's about 17,000 bronze per day that you need to acquire. And as I also said, completing Throne of Thunder and Siege of Orgrimmar normal difficulty daily will give you more than 17,000 per day. And that's not including, of course, any discounts. For example, if you don't want any of these toys, if you already have the ones you get from the achievements, maybe if you start ticking out some of the mounts you already have, perhaps some of the transmogs you have already collected by yourself in retail, then this grand total number of 1.6 million will start getting actually smaller. Like, for example, for me, since I don't care about toys, for example, then the number suddenly goes down by basically 400,000. So now suddenly the 17,000 bronze required per day goes down to 13,000 bronze required per day. And that's basically cutting almost an entire raid out of your daily chores. Now it's only okay for me to do just Siege every day instead of Siege plus Throne of Thunder every day. You can do the same with heirlooms, Heirlooms are a pretty chunky cost if you want to get them all and you don't need them, right? Another thing, for example, is to remember that Siege of Orgrimmar is, at the moment, just like the other Mists raids, on a daily lockout in retail as well. And retail is also giving you things like, for example, the Tasks of Manoroth. So you could be going daily in retail in Siege of Orgrimmar to get yourself the Tasks of Manoroth and save almost 40,000 bronze from Mists of Pandaria Remix that you can then spend somewhere else, for example. That's the situation right now as far as the, bronze acquisition strategies right now in Mists of Pandaria Remix are. Post-frog nerf, we can say. After everything changed with the nerfing of the frogs and players have started to look for good, viable alternatives to be able to collect bronze in a fast and efficient way. We have the long-term, possibly brain-damaging strategy of endlessly farming open-world random trash mobs like the goats in the Valley of the Four Winds or the mantids in Straves, and then we have the more contained, shorter and more efficient overall strategy of the raid farm, the daily lockout raid farm, the more reliable ones being Siege and Throne, for also having more bosses and having more trash for you to collect even extra bronze. Those are the better strategies right now in WoW Remix on how to get your bronze. We had to put a highlight, of course, on the raid version of this strategy since it's gonna be less likely for players to have that much time to just mindlessly grind normal mobs for hours, and if they were looking for something faster and more efficient with their time, then at the moment raiding to gather bronze is more efficient. It's the best solution, basically. Now, this of course will become rather irrelevant as we go by week and Blizzard will progressively buff bronze acquisition more and more and more. We know 100% this is going to happen. We just saw another limited time event like Plunderstorm develop, and they did exactly that. Over time, it became easier and easier to get to max renown for the event, so surely this will happen with WoW Remix as well. But for now, this is the situation when it comes to gathering your bronze in this game mode. So, with this out of the way, it's now time to leave each other on this Tuesday. Thanks, of course, as usual, to all of the Patreon supporters for the contribution and the help to the growth of the channel, which can, as usual, still be given completely for no money expenditure by liking and commenting down below on this video, as well as subscribing. Yeah, subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, it's insane how difficult it is to ask players to use the ward on a particular target every time. It's like rocket science.